We're doing something that, candidly, not many cities, not only across the state of California, but across the country are doing, and that is celebrating a balanced budget on time that protects social services to the most vulnerable citizens of our city, that protects public safety, and preserves, I think, the values that make this city such a special place. We did it without significant borrowing, and we did it without raising taxes. We did it without a lot of support from our state partners and from the federal government. We did it because we put aside our differences, we got creative, and we got to work. This budget did not just begin 60 days ago. This budget process began almost a year ago today when we signed last year's balanced budget. We made it clear that we needed to get to work, that we had a structural problem, candidly, we've had for well over a decade in the city, and that we would have to work through that. Based upon the previous years and our previous success, we had a pathway to doing that. That pathway began with our public employee unions. And I think if there's really a story that deserves to be told about this budget, that story begins with our leadership within the labor community. Labor has been under attack in this state and in this country. They've become the convenient excuse for, I think, a lack of leadership by our elected officials in Sacramento and, frankly, elected officials across this country. You know, I was just putting together the math as an aside without getting too tangential here. I just think it's interesting. I was putting the math together in my mind as I was driving over here that you'd think with all this discussion about pensions, and by the way, this city has done a lot of work on pensions, that we could solve all the world's problems if we would just solve the pension problem. So I did the math in terms of the $19.1 billion problem the state of California has. And get this, if you just excluded every dollar the state contributes to its pension, general fund dollar, if you assumed that you didn't have to write a dollar, meaning you didn't have to write a check to solve any of the pension, meaning just off the books, you'd think that would solve, what, half of the budget deficit based on the rhetoric up in Sacramento. Maybe some folks would say it would solve all of it. It would solve barely 10% of the state budget crisis. And I just think that's suggestive, that there's sort of hyperbole here around this issue. You know, it was a couple years ago we weren't putting a penny of our general fund into pensions. So when folks talk about this bloated bureaucracy and bloated government and how it's grown out of proportion because of pensions, they should take time to actually seek the facts. It is a major issue if we leave it unaddressed. But in this city, we haven't left it unaddressed. And by the way, this connects to my point about labor. Labor came to the table 2 years ago and did something no other county in the state of California did, and that is they supported what became Proposition B, which says for all new employees, they would contribute 2% of their salary to deal with our unfunded health care liability. At the time, it was projected at $4.98 billion. New actuarial work came down and shows about $4 billion. No other county had done that. People forgot that. The press has forgotten that. Then labor came back again last year and said, round two, police and fire said we will agree to contribute not 7.5%, but 9% to the pensions. We worked together with labor and the elected officials behind me, and we said, let's deal with the issue of spiking and that final year spike in salary. And we created a framework for smoothing. It wasn't everything we wanted, but we made progress. And then let's commit in subsequent years to setting aside money when times come good to deal with that unfunded corpus on the health care liability. That just happened with overwhelming support, 77% of the voters of the city. Labor agreed to those things. So it was rather remarkable that when we asked them 6 months ago, would they agree to wage concessions that they said, we're open. Through a collective bargaining process, working with, not imposing upon, we're happy to dialogue. They said, we need the facts. What is the magnitude of this deficit? And we said, we will show you, we'll give you everything we have. There's nothing hidden here. There are no games. We're not playing a game of leverage. Here are all the facts. And they concluded what we had concluded, that we had a big shortfall, and that the only way to get out of it, to say the things I just said, and that is we're preserving the social service safety network of this city, and to maintain our values as we know them in San Francisco, is for everyone to participate and everyone to step up. And that's exactly what public employees did. Almost $250 million labor contributed this year and next year. And that's an important part of the story. And next year to help us through this budget shortfall. There were still layoffs, and they agreed to layoffs. They wanted a cap appropriately. As they submitted those concessions to their members, as they supported pension reform, and as the mayor, who they disagreed with, as did the board in this budget, supported some reforms that included doing business a little bit differently, something called Prop whatever. I don't want to use it. Bob will get upset. He hates that letter. That's an extraordinary story that needs to be told. I wouldn't be standing here, and everybody else wouldn't be standing here, had they not stepped up to the plate. And so I want to give a big round of applause to almost, TW, you know what I mean, almost every public employee that stepped up to the plate this year. This is a celebration of their contribution and their leadership. They deserve it. And thank you, Bob, for everything you guys did. So that helped us. That's the predicate to get where we want to go. Today I'll be signing a $6.55 billion budget, a budget that continues our efforts to expand our universal health care to those that are uninsured, that actually expands and completes a 5-year promise we made to do universal after school, that included millions of dollars, again, to help offset the cuts teachers and administrators and paraprofessionals over at the school district. By the way, $49 million we've sent over from the Rainy Day Fund in the last 36 months to the school district, which is amazing. That invests $345 million into capital, more money to repave our streets than ever, over $50 million, if you were wondering. Allows this city to maintain its hours at its library branches, allows the recreation park system through pretty dramatic and difficult reforms to potentially add, if we do what we said we were going to do in the right way, 20,000 hours of new programming time that didn't exist a year ago. That allows us to maintain the number of sworn personnel in the police department, maintain the infrastructure of police stations, or rather fire stations, throughout our diverse communities. That's a pretty remarkable thing, and we didn't have to raise taxes to do it. We balanced the budget without raising taxes. I don't believe you should raise taxes when you don't need to raise taxes. Good people can disagree. I'm really proud of that. We, though, nonetheless, and I'll condense my comments and then conclude by thanking folks. We worked for 364 days to get here, reduced overtime by 16.2%. Because of good management by all the department heads that are here, from Ed Lee, our city administrator, on down, we're able to pull back $64 million in savings from last year's budget that helped us offset this deficit this year because of their leadership throughout the year. We invested in new programs. That's remarkable. We are putting another $5.9 million in the crime lab, as we should. $11.2 million budget, long overdue. The board was spectacular in this. No politics played there. No differences that were ever expressed publicly in a way that shouldn't have been. We got that done. We're actually doing something remarkable. I was just with all the administrators of the school district. No other city in America is doing this. Thank you, Supervisor Campos, in particular, for your leadership on this. We're actually giving children that enter into our kindergarten system a chance to go to college by giving them a trust fund, a baby bond of sorts, by setting aside money in a savings account. And I've always believed that once the mind is stretched, it never goes back to its original form, meaning these kids and their parents are going to think differently about their fate and future, because all of a sudden the one limitation, which was money, begins to look differently, because now they have something that so many of us take for granted. And no one knows this better than Jose Cisneros. Half of Latinos and half of African Americans in San Francisco don't have access to checking and savings accounts. Go paycheck to paycheck, payday to payday loan. This is a big deal. That's in this budget. That's something to be proud of. So I can go on and on. You know me, I can go on and on. And these numbers are indelible. You live and breathe this for so many months. They really are. But look, at the end of the day, it comes down to leadership, stewardship, collaboration, partnership. And that is the final point I wanted to make. This was a remarkable collaboration. And it was really led by the chair of the Finance Committee. I told him this hurts him politically, and I know it. And it's just so unfair that he did such a good job last year with the budget. He got, I think, more ad-backs than any other budget chair in history. Yet some folks that write some of these blogs said, he worked too collaboratively with the mayors. And I got him in a little trouble. So in many ways, I should be saying terrible things about him that will elevate his status with those same bloggers, but I can't, because I'd be lying. He once again did an extraordinary job, and that is John Avalos, who deserves a tremendous amount of praise for stewarding us through this. Thank you, John. Once again. And thank you to President Chu for once again appointing him to that position. That was the best early decision you made a year ago. But I also want to express thanks to the president of the board, who worked very hard on this budget for a long time, trying to steward things back and forth, trying to work with his colleagues and work with the budget committee and the finance chair. And thank him for taking some heat as well. Leadership isn't always easy. I always say, dogs don't bark at parked cars. Folks that actually do things take a little hate. Folks can sit on the sideline, talk about the world all they want, talk about idealism. We should hold a candlelight visual. Fabulous. But what have you done to manifest those ideals? David understands that sometimes you have to take some heat. And I want to just thank David Chu, President Chu, for his leadership and for his willingness to take a little heat in this budget by doing the right thing to help us get to a balanced budget and get to this point today. Thank you, David, for your leadership through this process. To all the other members of the board, and I think some of you just got here, and some of you have been here, and I think you're all here. My gosh, this could be an hour presentation. Thank you. All right, thank you, Rosberg Karimi. Thank you, Bevan Dufty. I mentioned David, and thank you again. Supervisor Maxwell, thank you for all your leadership. She's great just because she comes in and says it's all going to work out. Just for everyone, so thank you, Supervisor Maxwell, for tempering all of us on all sides of this. And thank you to Carmen Chu for her leadership and stewardship, and to all the members of the board that worked hard, working with department heads, working to solve the problems in their district, working to look citywide first. And I think that was the spirit of this budget, is we didn't see the kind of parochial politics we've seen oftentimes in the past. It was amazing with these ad-backs and things. You look at them, they're dominantly citywide perspective. That wasn't just about my district and my constituent. It was about the city. And I think all of them share that in common. So to all the members of the board, thank you very much. It was, I thought, a unanimous budget. It was unanimous. Once again, you can read between the lines. Some of us got it. So from labor to the elected family to all the department heads that, if only those meetings were recorded, to the incredible leadership of Steve Kava. I think Dufty created some Facebook fan club. But Steve has been the one rock, the one constant, the one that really held all this together and kept us all on the same page when we were starting to get off that script. And someone that doesn't need to be lauded, because he's been lauded appropriately so many times before. But Steve, thank you for all your leadership and all your work and those long hours with Bob and the team and the PEC, we call it, the Public Employees Committees, and all the work you did with members of the board, department heads to help get us here. And finally, to, where is that budget director? The good old Greg. He's looking a little haggard, for good reason. For the grace of God, go anyone that wants that job. But he did just another outstanding job, and to all his team. Greg was, you know, what you need more than ever, I think the board will agree, you need to have trust in the controller, trust in the budget director. If you don't have those two things, and trust in Harvey Rose and his team, and Deborah, thank you Harvey and Deborah for all your great work for so many years. I mean, those are the three anchors at the end of the day to get the technical work done. And when they all agree, we tend to all agree. When they all think this is the right thing to do, we tend to always think this is the right thing to do. And so I really cannot impress upon you how proud I am of their work and their stewardship and Greg's sacrifice in so many ways to do the job that he did this year, and to all of his teammates that worked so hard through long nights and long weekends to get us to this point. So if I forgot the sheriff, it wasn't intentional. Thank you, Sheriff, for your willingness to try new things in this budget and to help steward us through this process. To all of the enterprise department heads that are here, for your creativity to help us through this general fund shortfall. I won't go into detail because there's no reason, but thank you. And to the spirit that brought all you here, welcome, thank you. And if Steve, I haven't forgotten anything or anybody, I did mention Ben. Where is he? Ben's got a baby. Monique is here. Monique, Demuda, Ben Rosenfeld. They're the best. They're the best. Thank you, Monique. And she carried us. We were at the 90-yard, and was either a 90-yard dash or we get through that final 10 yards, and Monique carried us over. Thank you for that. We're ready. Who? I know Avalos is coming up. He and I are going to be back signing. And want to thank the Chiefs and Dr. Katz and Trent and everybody else. So why don't we sign this budget? Thanks. We got a lot of pens. I know this is hardly presidential, but why don't we all try to gather around?
Get the budget committee members.
Yeah, you guys get all done. So let's do this photo op time. So you guys all stand back. So get in. So do it. Not many people thought we'd get this done.
I never thought I'd get that.
You always did. You always did. You were coming. All right, so let's see this out. We're making this up as we go. It worked. Balanced budget on time in the city and county of San Francisco. Well done. Thank you, Dan Brown. Well done, Herbert. Well done. Well deserved. David? Ben? Thanks, brother. Excellent.
Just got one. Thank you. Yeah, no kidding. Take this on to my wife and say that it was all worth it.
John,
getting a collection of
we were all finishing, but I didn't tell you all to hold on a second because Chair Avalos.
Is this on? I'm starting to get a collection of these pens. This is a proud day for San Francisco, where many municipalities and counties are struggling across the state of California. Here in San Francisco, we are able to balance our budget, and I'm very proud of the work all across the city, from the mayor's administration, the mayor, Steve Cava, the mayor's budget director, Greg Wagner, who has spent the whole year working on this budget, to the work of my colleagues on the budget committee, Supervisors Ross Mercarimi, Sean Ellsburn, Sophie Maxwell, and David Campos. We had a very long process that involved months of work, even before the month of June, on the city budget. We worked closely with community advocates to make sure that we were well aware of what changes were being proposed or coming down in this budget. We wanted to work very, very closely because this budget document is the most important document that comes out of the city and county of San Francisco. Every aspect of our services, every aspect about how government is run is embedded in this document. And the public expects us to do our best and to have the best work come out of this committee. And I'm very, very proud of that work. I'm very, very proud of everything that we've achieved. Closing cuts to senior services to make sure that seniors have meals when they need them. Cuts to the children, youth, and family services have been restored. Our safety net is intact. We still have our public protection agencies, the police and the fire department, doing their important work that serves all of San Francisco. All of this is because of the great work and the cooperation across the city and county of San Francisco. This is a proud day, and I want to thank everyone for all of their hard work. Labor unions, as the mayor has indicated, have given back a tremendous amount, have made great sacrifices. I know that our department heads have done the same as well. Just looking at the police budget, how the overtime of the police budget has come down dramatically, where it was maybe about $24 million is now about $7 million in overtime. And that's about the tremendous leadership that Chief Gascon has implemented through his department to assure that we have accountability about how our hours are run there. These are just the typical work that our department heads are doing all across the city to make our city function despite the great deficit we're facing. So a proud day for San Francisco. Thank you everyone for all your hard work, and let's get on to the next year, which I know is a great deal of uncertainty. I'm working on an alcohol mitigation fee to help find revenue for our budget. I hope that we can have cooperation across the city to make that happen as well. Thank you very much.
President David Chu.
Thank you. I'm going to be brief, but I, of course, want to echo the thanks of the mayor, of the mayor's chief of staff, the budget director, all of the wonderful budget analysts who spent many hours on this, the department heads, everyone here, I can see almost to a person, was incredibly involved in getting this done. And of course, my colleagues, Supervisor John Avalos, thank you for allowing me to convince you to step up again for a second year. You did tremendous work, as did all of my colleagues on the Budget Committee and on our board. There are some folks who are not here who I want to really extend a warm thanks to. Everyone who represented all of the different and important constituencies that were affected in so many ways. I want to thank you for the late nights that you spent with us at the Board of Supervisors, helping us winnow down the budget priorities with the few dollars that we have. This is not a perfect budget, but I think it is a good budget. It is a budget that protects core city services in public health, in public safety, and services for the most vulnerable San Franciscans that we have within our midst. We know that we are facing continuing challenges. We have budget deficits for the years to come. We have decisions that could come down from Washington, D.C. and from Sacramento that could require us in a few short months to be back at the negotiation table again. And the thing that I ask is that with the same spirit that brought us to where we are today, we will bring that spirit to ensure that we make the right decisions for San Francisco for today and for the future. Thank you for being part of this process.
Bob Muscat, our labor leader.
Thank you. I think all of us can take a moment to really appreciate the fact that we have done something that really distinguishes our city from other cities, as the mayor's mentioned, and counties in California. It really is a tremendous achievement because of the way that we all work together, because we work creative, we listen carefully to each other. I want to point out that city employees ratified every one of these agreements by over 90%, voting in favor. So this clearly represents the sentiment of all city employees. The truth of the matter is that city employees want nothing more than a well-run, efficient city that is not only a city that's the most progressive city in the country, but also the most effective, efficient, and well-run city. I want to thank the mayor for his leadership over the last few years in moving San Francisco into that direction, and I think on behalf of all city employees, it really is a pleasure to be a part of the process. Congratulations to everybody.
So there you have it. You get all of us individually. Thank you all very much for coming out. And as David Chu just said, we're prepared. If we see some state diminution in terms of contributions, federal diminution in terms of contributions, we're ready to go. We're ready to get to work. And we will be moving on to next year's budget very, very soon. Smile, department heads. Thank you all.